6 spine-chilling neighbor horrors revealed. Each night, a sinister secret got closer and closer. As the moon hung ominously over the quaint suburban neighborhood, a sense of foreboding masked the familiar charm. Sarah, a dedicated nurse in her 30s, felt the dread creep beneath her skin like a chill in the night air. Her love for the simple life picket fences, cycling children had provided comfort, but as she settled back in her quiet home after a long night shift, a sinister shift whispered through the shadows. Outside, her neighbor Mr. Jenkins dug in his garden at odd hours, his flashlight casting eerie shapes as it flickered against the dark. What was he hiding? The oppressive stillness of the house was shrouded in whispers, the kind that crawled into your mind and twisted, leaving you cold inside. The haunting sound of a woman's sobbing shattered the quiet, echoing across the block like a mournful song from the underworld. Each night it intensified, pulling Sarah deeper into confusion. Tommy, her bright-eyed 7-year-old, was her whole world. She should be able to protect him, but each night, she felt eyes upon her, lurking in the darkness. A rusted vehicle with dim headlights parked outside every evening, casting ghostly shadows across their living room curtains, making her skin prickle with fear. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The sound of children laughing used to be a balm for her worries, but now it felt like bait. Each innocent giggle from Tommy brought a rush of anxiety. The whispers of missing pets and people in the neighborhood had turned into a chilling reality, one Sarah was unwilling to acknowledge fully. Yet she noticed the small acts of kindness from her neighbors felt tainted, as though they were masks hiding something terrible beneath. Then, one sleepless night, the sobs escalated into a blood-curdling scream that sliced through the tranquility. Sarah dashed to the window, her heart racing as she swept the darkness. Mr. Jenkins hunched over near her house, casting an ominous shadow toward her son's bedroom. Panic exploded inside her. "Mr. Jenkins," she called out, her voice trembling. Was he a harmless old man, or a keeper of dark secrets? He remained frozen, oblivious, as if she were nothing more than the air itself. The night closed in around her as Tommy's laughter chimed from the shadows of their home, innocent and blissfully unaware. The moment was haunting crusty realities shattering her peaceful facade. Breathless with terror, she rushed back inside and locked the door with shaking hands. The porch next door sat empty, the curtain of normalcy ripped apart. Sarah knew she had to protect her son, and as dread pooled in her gut, a singular thought took root. The neighbors could no longer be trusted. But with the shadows creeping ever closer, she questioned if escape was even an option. The night promised nothing but dread, wrapping around Sarah like a suffocating blanket. She pressed her ear against the window, straining to hear anything out of place. The neighborhood, once a cocoon of comfort, felt like a haunted maze. Shadows danced in the peripheral, taunting her with their presence. But she couldn't pinpoint where they came from. That Tommy's laughter echoed from the living room, a chilling contrast to the tremors in her heart. Every giggle felt heavy with an impending dark reality, a bell tolling for innocence lost. She turned to him, forcing a smile. "How about we read a story before bed?" she said lightly, though her voice quaked as they settled into the worn-out chair beneath the dim lamp. Sarah's gaze flittered to the window. Mr. Jenkins was gone, but the rusted vehicle remained parked outside, its headlights dimmed as if snoozing in the night, awaiting predator. In the silence that unfurled, her phone chimed with a message. It was from her best friend, Karen. "Have you seen the news? More pets missing in our area, people too. Stay safe, okay?" Her heart plunged. The whispers of missing individuals were more than just gossip. They were a desperate cry for help, lost in the anonymity of the night. "Mom, what's that noise?" Tommy's voice sliced through her thoughts. He glanced toward the window, eyes wide with uncertainty. "It's just the wind, babe. Nothing to worry about," she replied, but her own instincts screamed otherwise. She didn't believe her own words. The mere idea of the wind could evoke someone's name on her tongue. Even the people she once deemed friendly were tainted now by a veil of suspicion. Suddenly, loud banging came from outside, echoing like thunder against her walls. Sarah shot upright, Tommy's little hand gripping hers tight. With every beat of her heart, she ventured to the window again, peering through the curtain. For a moment, there was stillness. The world felt suspended in time. Then, without warning, the neighbor's front door swung open. A silhouette stepped out, framed by shrouded darkness. Sarah's breath hitched as she recognized the figure. It was Mrs. Hill, a kindly woman who always wore a smile. But tonight her face was a mask of dread. She scanned the street, her own eyes flickering as though she sought something or someone. "Please," Mrs. Hill's whisper floated through the still air, soaked in fear. "Help me." Before Sarah could react, Mrs. Hill dashed toward her house, stumbling as she did. Her expression twisted in terror, eyes wide and desperate. But just as quickly, a cold wind swept by, and the moment broke. The rusted vehicle's headlights flared to life, illuminating the night. Shadows moved within, shifting, writhing, and in the dance of light, Sarah glimpsed figures. Dark faces peering forward, watching. She pulled Tommy closer. The little boy's heartbeat thrummed against her arm, a frantic rhythm mirroring her own. What if they were one of those who were missing? She could barely breathe, panic clouding her thoughts. There was no way she could protect Tommy if the neighborhood had turned into this twisted game of deceit. "Mom, I'm scared." Tommy whimpered, in the next moment. Mrs. Hill's eyes locked onto Sarah's. "Get out. They're coming," she screamed, her pitch slicing through the darkness. Something churned in Sarah's mind. They were coming? Who were they? Before her instincts could decide, fear propelled her into motion. She knew she had to act. Sweeping Tommy up into her arms, Sarah bolted toward the back door. The chilling realization gripping her, this wasn't just about hiding anymore. They were being hunted. Would they escape the impending darkness lurking at their door? Or would they be consumed by the very shadows Sarah had been so afraid of? The answer echoed in the night as she hesitated at the threshold, courage at war with terror. What awaited them outside? The night had never felt so alive with danger. Each beat of Sarah's heart reverberated in her ears, loud enough to drown out the whispers of the shadows just beyond her door. With Tommy pressed tightly against her, she ventured out into the backyard, feeling the chill of the ground seep into her bare feet. The air was thick, oppressive, as if the night itself were holding its breath. "Mom, where are we going?" Tommy's voice quivered, urgency lacing his words. The other side of the fence, she muttered, hurrying toward the dim outline of the old wooden barrier separating their yard from the one next door. The slats creaked ominously as she pulled Tommy along, her mind racing. What did Mrs. Hill know? And more importantly, who was coming? A scraping sound from the front of the house made her freeze. It was followed by hushed voices, muffled, low, but unmistakably human. They were close. Too close. Panic surged through her, igniting her senses. She pressed her back against the cool wood of the fence, scanning the yard for a way out. "Can we go back inside?" Tommy pleaded. "Not yet," Sarah whispered, glancing around. She was almost sick with dread. She could picture those dark figures in the vehicle, their eyes boring into her, waiting for her to make a mistake. Then, from the corner of her eye, she noticed movement. A sudden flash of light, a flashlight cut through the darkness, moving erratically toward the back of the house. Sarah's stomach twisted. Someone was searching for them. "Mom," Tommy whispered again, clutching her shirt, his nails digging in. "Shush," she hissed. They needed to be silent. They needed to survive. Sarah peered over the fence's edge, her grip tightening around Tommy. What she saw sent a wave of icy dread coursing through her veins. Mrs. Hill was not alone. Several other neighbors, people she had shared cups of sugar and good conversations with, were gathered near that dilapidated vehicle. Their faces were shadowed, but the urgency in their movements was clear. Then Sarah spotted a glint of metal at the corner of the headlights. A knife. Mrs. Hill was holding a knife, resting it against her leg, her expression shifting from panic to fury as her neighbors murmured among themselves. It was an unsettling gathering, cloaked in a strange tension as if they were conducting a dark ritual under the guise of normalcy. "What are they doing?" Tommy asked, confusion mixing with fear. "I don't know," she breathed, urgency constricting her throat. Suddenly, a loud scream pierced through the night. It was dizzying, high-pitched, and full of terror. Sarah's heart raced as she turned her gaze toward the front of the house, terror rooting her to the spot. Then another scream followed, more frantic this time. It was intense, chaotic. The whispers turned into shouts, and the flashlight beam swung wildly, illuminating eyes that looked more rabid than concerned. The sound of a struggle rippled through her skin, making her feel exposed and vulnerable. "Mom, please," Tommy pleaded, bewilderment creeping into his small frame. "I want to go back. Listen to me, we have to keep quiet," she whispered harshly, fighting against the rising panic within her chest. But it was too late. The sounds of chaos rose, spilling over into the quiet of the night, wrapping around them like a vice. What if they turned on them? Her grip on Tommy tightened, panic morphing into sheer determination. She needed a plan. She needed to move. The neighbors were no longer the friendly faces she had known. They were something darker, their true selves unveiled. "Follow me," she said fiercely, thrusting her fear aside. Sarah turned, determination igniting a flame inside her. As she searched for a way to escape, she glanced once more at the figures that had once been part of her everyday life. And at that moment, she knew something far worse was lurking in the shadows. The streetlight flickered out suddenly, plunging everything into darkness. It was the harbinger of the storm, the quiet before the chaos erupted. What horrors awaited them beyond the fence, now that the true nature of her neighbors was laid bare? Would they emerge from the night or become swallowed by it forever? Her breath quickened. They had to keep moving before it was too late. The darkness enveloped them like a heavy cloak, smothering the air and drowning out any lingering hope. Sarah felt trapped in the grip of a nightmare, with Tommy's small hand trembling in hers. The screams faded to a distant echo, swallowed by the looming shadows of the trees. She took a deep breath and steeled herself. "Stay close to me," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Each word felt like a fragile promise in the face of impending doom. She took a step back from the fence, ready to dart toward the thicket on the side of the house. "Isn't that where the big dog lives?" Tommy asked, fear etched on his face. "Yes, but it's better than staying here," she insisted, yanking him with purpose. They slipped away from the fence, silent and tense, their footfalls muffled against the damp earth. Once they reached the edge of the thicket, Sarah crouched, scanning the yard for any signs of movement. Tonight should have been filled with familiar comforts, laughter from neighbors' barbecues, or the sound of children playing. Instead, the stillness was suffocating, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant sounds of chaos at the front of the house. "Mom, what is happening?" Tommy whimpered, his voice trembling as he wrapped himself around her. "Just some people are confused, Tommy. They'll be okay." But as she said it, she knew it felt like a lie. Peering through the tangled branches, Sarah's heart sank at the sight of orange lights flickering at the front yard, revealing figures moving erratically. She caught glimpses of frantic hands, flashlights darting like disturbed fireflies. Were they looking for them? "We have to cross the yard and get to the trees," she murmured, gripping Tommy's hand tighter. "Ready?" "Ready," he said, but there was no conviction behind his words. With their hearts pounding in sync, they slipped out of the thicket and into the open yard. The wet grass was icy against her feet as they moved in a low crouch, shadows clinging to them like a darker shade of night. Just a few more steps, she urged herself. Suddenly, the cacophony of shouts erupted again, louder this time. It sounded angry. It sounded desperate. "We can't let them leave. They mustn't escape," she heard one of the neighbors shout. The words sent a shockwave of terror through Sarah. What had she stumbled into? They were the ones in danger, now no longer the ones hiding. The urge to flee intensified. She needed to protect Tommy. "Run," she gasped, breaking into a full sprint toward the trees, adrenaline fueling her every step. The world blurred, and the shadows stretched close behind them. But just as she reached the tree line, she heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps pounding behind them. The lights swelled, illuminating the yard as she felt a surge of dread. Someone had spotted them. "Mom, they're coming!" Tommy screamed, panic spilling into his voice. "Keep going," she yelled back, pushing herself to move faster. They dashed into the old woods, branches whipping at their arms and legs. It was thick and dark, but it offered some relief from the maddening lights and shouts. In the distance, a light flared up again, casting a hellish glow among the trees. They one T-stop. Sarah breathed, glancing back, heart racing. She began to wonder if the only way to escape was deeper into the woods, or if that would lead them straight into an even darker fate. "Mom, where are we going?" Tommy cried out, now truly scared. "Somewhere safe," she said, desperate but determined to find a way out. But as they pushed further into the ghostly woods, another truth clawed its way into her mind. What if the true horror lay not outside, but within? They continued deeper into the dark, but the distance left behind began to take on a haunting rhythm, and shadows, once merely a backdrop, now felt like they had their own breath, their own hunger. As Sarah stumbled forward, fear coiling tightly around her heart, she could hear them again, the faint voices rising, chanting. Was it a warning or a welcome? "Tommy," she breathed, her voice trailing off as she felt something cold brush her ankle. A low growl reverberated through the trees, primal and fierce. "What is that?" Tommy asked, eyes wide with fear. And amidst the growing dread in the air, Sarah's mind raced. What kind of nightmare awaited them in this darkness? The woods seemed to call for them. "Run," she cried. But the wolves that lurked beyond man's understanding might not be the only ones hunting them this night. What awaited them in these twisted woods? Would they escape the people who once smiled at their door, or discover yet another face of terror? Branches clawed at Sarah's arms as they fell deeper into the woods, the air thickening with dread. She strained to listen past the pounding of her heart, the growls echoing around them, a promise of something monstrous lurking just out of sight. Tommy's terrified breaths were sharp in her ears, mixing with the rustle of leaves that danced around them. "Mom, I can't see anything," Tommy whimpered, desperately clutching her hand. "Just hold on tight," Sarah whispered, fear wrapping around her like a vice. She pushed ahead, determined not to stop. Behind them, the frantic shouts were fading, like echoes of a nightmare. But there was no real safety here, not in this dark symphony of breath and shadow. Without warning, the ground beneath them turned soft and yielding. Sarah stumbled, her foot sinking into the rotting earth. "Oh no," she gasped, panic rising. Tommy stepped back, but it was too late. They had crossed into a small clearing. A peculiar glow pulsed from the center, a sickly green light that slithered its way through the trees. They were not alone. Figures emerged from the darkness, pale and gaunt, their eyes glinting like obsidian stones. They wore tattered clothes that hung loosely from skeletal frames, their mouths stretched into twisted grins that were more menacing than welcoming. "Welcome back," one of them hissed, voice like dry leaves scraping against stone. "Stay behind me," Sarah growled, instinctively stepping in front of Tommy. The things before her laughed, a soft, dreadful sound that hovered in the air, chilling her to the bone. "Running won't help you. You must face it, just like the others." Another cried, pointing a bony finger at her. "What do you want from us?" she yelled, heart racing in terror, the hope for escape shriveling up inside her. "Only what lies within you," the first creature snapped, moving closer. "You both of you belong here. Enter and be free." A frenzied pulse of fear surged through Sarah. Was it a choice? She could feel Tommy shaking, the innocence of his youth faltering in the cold shadows of the unknown. "Mom, I don't want to be here," he cried, eyes wide with panic. The figures recoiled, displeasure rippling through them. "You will stay," one intoned, as a wall of shadow rushed forward like a wave, flooding the clearing and closing in on them. "No," Sarah shouted, feeling Tommy grip her tighter. They would not take them. Not like this. Heart pounding, she grabbed Tommy's hand, pulling him toward the edge of the clearing. They sprinted back into the trees, but the laughter followed, an ominous sound that grew louder with each panicked step. The woods twisted around them, branches intertwining as though in a desperate attempt to trap them. "Faster!" she screamed, pushing through the thicket, breath burning in her lungs. She could feel the weight of the night closing in, the darkness too eager to devour them whole. Then, pangs of dread shot through her veins as she heard the growls again, slicing through the air like knives. She dared to glance behind. The figures were there, dancing in the shadows, moving with a twisted grace. Then the growl morphed into a roar, rushing from the depths of the woods. "Mom!" Tommy cried, stumbling. "Get up!" she urged, but even as she yelled, the ground shook beneath them, echoing with turmoil. Roots erupted from the earth, digging in like skeletal hands trying to pull them back. Just a little closer, the soft voices called out, but they took on a savage edge, their tones dripping with malice. As they struggled against the unseen forces dragging them, another sound broke through the unmistakable cry of a child echoing in the distance. It felt familiar, haunting. Tommy, we need to find that sound. With renewed determination, she surged forward, heart racing, navigating a web of shadows. What child was out there? And who would they find at the end of this perilous path? The woods thickened, impenetrable. The air crackled with agony and despair. Where are you? Sarah yelled, desperation clawing at her throat. But as they pressed on, she couldn't shake the feeling that this pursuit would lead them to end up facing something far worse than the howls in the dark. Perhaps the answer they sought was one they were never meant to discover. What awaited them in the trees? Would they find a way out or slip further into the clutches of madness? The shadows deepened, swallowing their cries as Sarah's heart thundered in her chest. Each step was a gamble, and with every breath, she sensed the forest becoming more alive, the trees whispering secrets soaked in malice. The cries of the unseen child echoed again, a desperate wail that twisted Sarah's gut, fueling the fire of her resolve. Mom, wait. Tommy's voice trembled behind her. The panic in his tone was like ice carving into her veins. We can't stop. We need to find that sound. She barked, her own strength waning with each passing moment. The words came out harsh, but the pounding anxiety drowned any gentleness. Branches snapped behind them, the laughter of the ghoulish figures too close, too hungry. They were playing a game, but Sarah wasn't interested in being part of their twisted entertainment. She forced her legs to move faster, to push through the heavy fog of fear. Mom, I'm scared. Tommy's breath was ragged, too short to last. She pulled him forward, fiercely, but worry clawed at her. What if he couldn't keep up? A glint caught her eye, a faint shimmer about 10 paces ahead. The glow was beckoning, fading in and out like a dying ember. Look, Tommy, she urged. Do you see that? Maybe we can find help. Tommy nodded, his eyes wide. They darted toward the mysterious light, but as they neared, the ground gave way once more. Mud sucked at their feet, the muck pulling them back with a foul stench that made Sarah want to gag. With ice in her veins and desperation igniting her core, she hoisted Tommy into her arms and lunged, the forest around them seething with discontent. The air thickened, coiling around them like a tightened noose. Behind them, the voices rose again, a cacophony of whispers clawing at the edges of her sanity. You can't escape, one cried, distorted and echoing, as if it were everywhere and nowhere at once. Keep moving, she shouted above the chaos, racing toward the light that flickered like hope teasing her from afar. Suddenly, the wailing intensified, enveloping them in sorrow. It wasn't just one child's voice anymore. It multiplied, filling the air, weaving tales of sorrow and regret, the longing of spirits trapped and pleading. The glow grew stronger, vibrating with a pulsing rhythm that made her head spin. Mom! Tommy shrieked, and Sarah stopped short, her heart falling to her stomach. The figures emerged again, way too close, their faces now twisted masks of desperation, eyes bulging with a hunger that transcended flesh. We know what you've done, one croaked, its voice a chilling whisper that pricked at the edges of her memory. What? Sarah cried, her mind racing. She felt a horrible recognition swelling within her, like a wave crashing over her. Had she wronged them somehow? Or was this a torment orchestrated by the malevolent spirits that haunted these woods? Leave her alone, Tommy yelled, his voice breaking through her thoughts. The child's bravery bolstered her resolve, and with a fierce growl bubbling in her throat, Sarah charged forward, clinging to her son, determined not to let the shadows consume them. As they stumbled into the light, a figure emerged, illuminated in a blinding white that cast shadows deep into the forest behind them. It was a little girl, her eyes wide with a mix of innocence and terror. Help us, she cried, her voice piercing through the haze. But before Sarah could respond, she felt the ground beneath her splinter. The earth trembled, and the darkness erupted with a frenzy of howls, clawing and reaching for them. The girl extended her hand, but the figures behind them surged, hungry, and relentless. In that moment, Sarah had to make a choice. Should she save Tommy, or the little girl who appeared to be trapped? "Mom, we have to get out," Tommy shouted, pulling her sleeve, wrenching her focus back to the forest that threatened to swallow them whole. Time slowed. Each heartbeat felt like an eternity. The girl looked up at them, her expression bruised with anguish. Then she vanished into the expanse of light, leaving Sarah breathless with a single, lingering question. What had they just stepped into safety or a deeper trap woven from despair? "Stay close," Sarah yelled, fear clawing at her throat as they plunged further into the light, not knowing what horrors could await them just beyond the threshold. Did they leave something behind, or was the real nightmare only just beginning? The light engulfed them, a blinding white that felt both warm and suffocating. In that moment, everything faded: the cacophony of despair, the grasping shadows, the hungry wails. There was only light. Then, the brightness flickered and dimmed, revealing their surroundings. The forest receded. Sarah found herself standing in what looked like an old cabin, its wooden walls covered in peeling paint and draped in shadows. Dust motes hung in the air, glistening like trapped souls. "Where are we?" Tommy whispered, peering around with wide, frightened eyes. "I don't know." Fear clawed at her throat as she fought to steady her breath. The cabin felt wrong, the air thick with unease. An unsettling silence settled, punctuated only by the creaking floorboards beneath their feet. A rustle caught her ear, followed by a soft thud. Heart racing, Sarah turned toward the source. In the far corner lay an old trunk, its lock rusted and covered in cobwebs, as if it hadn't been opened in ages. "Stay close to me," she warned, slowly moving toward it. "Mom, I don't like this place." Tommy's voice trembled, echoing her own fears. "I know, but we need to see what's in there." Sarah's voice trailed off. What if it held the answers? Or worse, what if it unleashed something more terrifying? But the thought of escaping this haunting world pushed her on to as she knelt beside the trunk. The echoes of the forest began to seep into her mind again, howls and whispers rising in a sickening tide. "You shouldn't have come here," they seemed to say, reverberating around her. With shaking hands, she examined the trunk, prying at the latch. It creaked open, revealing a collection of dusty, aged items, crumpled letters, an old photograph, and a small, cracked mirror. She picked up the photograph. It depicted a family: 2 parents, 3 children, all smiles. They looked so happy. But then she noticed the figure in the corner, a gaunt, shadowy outline almost swallowed by darkness. "Why does that one look sad?" Tommy asked, voice barely above a whisper. A chill washed over Sarah. "I don't know, honey." Her heart raced, as if the figure was a warning. Whatever terror awaited them was closer than she'd imagined. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the cabin, extinguishing the light. Darkness clung to every corner, wrapping around them like a wet blanket. "Mom!" Tommy shrieked, panic in his voice. "Tommy!" She reached for him, her fingers grazing only air. "Get back here." "Mom, I can't." His voice was cut off by a deafening crash. It sounded like something heavy had just fallen, sending debris scattering across the floor. "Tommy!" Her throat constricted, desperation swirling within her. Navigating through the pitch black, Sarah felt like she was moving through a nightmare. Each step was a risk, paranoia prickling her skin. Shadows danced on the edges of her vision, taunting her. The moment felt like hours as she stumbled over something soft, struggling not to fall. "Tommy, where are you?" she shouted, heart hammering. No response. The world around her began to whisper, chilling words echoing in the void. "He ours now. He ours, Tommy," she screamed, panic fueling her adrenaline. She couldn't lose him. Then, the coldness surrounded her even more, filling every space, extinguishing hope. But then a glimmer of light appeared in the distance, pulsing gently. "Over here." A voice floated through the darkness. An elation surged through her. "Tommy!" She bolted toward it, taking off through the thick shadows. But as she ran, doubts gnawed fiercely. What if it wasn't him? What if it was another lure into the void? She reached the edge of the faint glow. As it expanded, she saw the source: a figure that looked familiar. Yet the face, twisted and shadowed, bore a haunting resemblance to the dark figure in the photograph. "Help me," it rasped, the voice chillingly similar to her son's. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but she was rooted in place, staring into the face of a nightmare. Please, before it's too late, a bone-chilling question spiraled in her mind. Which of them was truly calling? Just as she opened her mouth to scream, the light flickered one last time, then went out completely. What was real? What was a trap? And who had really called her name? Darkness slithered around Sarah like a cold, waiting predator. Panic clawed at her insides, squeezing her heart like a vice as she fought to regain her composure. Without the light, the cabin morphed into a living thing, its walls breathing oppressive despair. "Tommy!" she cried again, desperation boiling over. The silence swallowed her words. If he was here, if he was truly here, he would answer her. 1,000 what-ifs splintered inside her mind, each one more unsettling than the last. She felt the corners of the room closing in, the shadows growing deeper and sentient. Each sound was amplified, a cruel joke played by the darkness. A soft rustling, creaking floorboards the cabin seemed to mock her, reminding her of the safety she had lost. A sudden, grating noise broke through her thoughts, like nails on a chalkboard. She instinctively turned toward it, her heart racing. "Tommy!" the voice echoed again, raspier this time, twisting and distorting in the air. A shadow flitted across her line of vision, almost human yet disassembled, like a broken doll of nightmare. "Is that you?" she begged, stumbling forward though her instincts screamed not to move. But for every step she took, the shadows retreated into tighter knots, binding her to her fears. Just beyond her grasp, the trunk lay open, a dark mouth spewing dread. Perhaps it held answers. Perhaps it was safer than the darkness that surrounded her. With trembling hands, she made her way back to it, praying that whatever held sway in this cursed place would show mercy. As she reached down, the air thickened, wrapping around her throat. A whisper tickled her ear. "Close your eyes, bring him back." The words echoed through her, wrapping around her heart. But what would it take to bring Tommy back? Would she be forced to return to that unholy place they had fled? Or was that exactly what the shadows wanted? Gathering every ounce of courage, she fished through the items in the trunk. The mirror she held it up, face it against the darkness. The cracked reflection stared back at her, but it felt wrong, twisted and mournful, showing visions of despair. Mom Tommy's voice again, but somehow distorted, echoing not from the trunk, but from deeper within the cabin. "Tommy." She spun around, legs shaking, stomach twisting. The shadows shifted, peeling back like old paint to reveal a door she hadn't seen before. It hung slightly ajar, edged in darkness. A sliver of orange light spilled through, sullied and painful. Could it lead to him? Could she really face whatever waited behind that door? All senses screamed at her to flee. Yet an instinct stronger than fear pulled her toward the light. One step, 2 steps. She moved closer, heart pounding in rhythm with the soft beat of something alive behind the door. "Help me." This time it was louder, more defined. The chill in her spine unfurled into terror as she reached for the door, trembling fingers brushing its surface. But the moment her hand made contact, the door swung open with a ferocity she couldn't comprehend. Wind rushed past her, gusts heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. It was an invitation or a trap. With a final breath, Sarah steeled herself, stepping into the light. Darkness whimpered behind her, a monster growling at the loss of its prey. What lay beyond might reveal Tommy, or it might be the end of everything she knew. And as she crossed the threshold, a deafening roar erupted from the shadows, solidifying a chilling truth. Nothing prepared her for what lay ahead. What awaited her in the light? How far would she have to go to claim her son back from the abyss? The light was a flickering pulse, an uncertain heartbeat against the chaos that shadowed her. Sarah stepped through the door, feet barely managing to push her forward. The moment she crossed the threshold, she sensed the shift. The air was laced with a sickly sweetness that suffocated her breath. Before her lay a long corridor, walls lined with peeling wallpaper that surged and fell like skin stretched too tight. The floorboards creaked beneath her weight, yawning with every cautious step, as if they wanted to groan out some warning. Something about the hallway felt wrong, as if she had stumbled into a memory best left forgotten. "Tommy." The word dripped from her lips, heavy with hesitance. She felt it echo, each syllable swallowed by the damp air that thickened around her. Further down the corridor, a door stood ajar. A trail of light danced beneath it, gold and warm. an invitation tinged with dread. "Mom," the voice came again, clearer this time, yet still edged in a hint of terror. She hesitated. The last thing she wanted was to fall deeper into whatever this place held. But she had to know. She needed to see him, to feel his small hands clutching hers again. The door creaked wide with her gentle push, revealing a small, dimly lit room. Dust hung like a veil over every surface, the air thick with a silence that felt all-consuming. And there he was, or what remained of the memory of him. "Tommy," her voice cracked. The warmth dissipated, replaced by an icy rush racing down her spine. In the corners of the room, shadows writhed like living tendrils, hungry and eager to consume. They swarmed her, and she felt the pull and urge to sink into the darkness instead, to join the cacophony that promised relief from this ghastly waiting. But there was something anchoring her still. A small trinket lay in the center of the room, a silver locket she recognized. Tommy's locket. Her heart raced as she bent to pick it up. It was cold, and inside it held a picture of him, smiling, eyes bright and filled with life. "Help me," the voice was a shout now, merged with chaos. Distant yet close, the sliver of movement caught her eye. Shadows were stretching and shuddering at the edges of the room, coiling like serpents. Panic surged through her as the shadows began to loom closer, their forms shifting, resembling broken limbs reaching for her. "No!" she screamed. In that moment, the locket slipped from her fingers, crashing onto the wooden floor. The sound reverberated, and the shadows halted. The air thrummed with tension, a stillness that hung like a thick fog. She longed to reach for it, but an unfamiliar dread anchored her in place. Tommy's voice lingered in her ears, scratching at her mind. "Mom, I'm here," with a firm, steadying breath. She lunged for the locket, willing its warmth to seep back into her. As her fingers clasped around it, a beam of light erupted from it, illuminating the room in a blinding flash. Shadows screamed, retreating back into their dark corners, revealing another door, and a face she would recognize anywhere. "Help me, Mom." Tommy was there, eyes wide and pleading, reaching out through the transparent veil of shadows that surrounded him. But then, everything shifted. Abruptly, the air thickened again, and the room warped, the walls pulsing as if caught in a fever. The light from the locket dimmed, drawing shadows back and gorging on the hope she clung to. "Tommy." She reached out, but her voice splintered, lost in a cacophony of whispers, a chorus of lost souls clawing at her ears. The fear clawed deeper inside her. What kind of choice was she being forced to make? And then, from the depths of darkness, she heard it again. "Close your eyes, bring him back." Could she truly bring him back from this void? The lure of the darkness beckoned, longing for her surrender. Sarah took a step back, breath caught in her throat. What would she lose if she plunged further into this nightmare? But what would she lose if she didn't? Clutching the locket, she stood on the threshold of a choice, one that could change everything. The shadows shifted, eager and hungry, as the voice grew louder, taunting her with temptations of dark promises. What was lurking deeper in the shadows? And would she pay the price to find out? Fear wrapped its icy fingers around Sarah as she stood before the looming shadows, the essence of her resolve wavering. Tommy's voice echoed through her mind, clawing desperately for connection. "Mom, help me." The swirling darkness pulsed before her, exhaling despair. The choice before her felt monumental. Would she pull Tommy back from the clutches of this nightmare, or would she, in the process, invite more doom upon them? "Close your eyes, bring him back." The whisper curled around her, weighty and tempting. The cold locket in her hand felt like a lifeline, a tether to the warmth of her son. With trembling fingers, she clutched it tighter, her heart pounding furiously against the walls of her chest. Perhaps they could use it, together an anchor, a shield against the suffocating shadows. "Tommy," she cried, voice echoing off the walls. "I'm coming for you." Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes and focused, envisioning the boy she loved, the laughter they shared, the way his tiny hands curled around hers as they walked down their street. A normal life torn apart by a dark web. The shadows recoiled, their inky tendrils unable to handle the light her memories imparted, but she felt it a pull. Deep in her gut, the sensation of being drawn, not just towards the darkness, but towards her son. "We can do this together, Tommy," she shouted, fighting against the encroaching dread. The corridor shuddered as if caught in an earthquake, the walls pulsing, twisting like tortured souls. You can't resist. You are already ours. The shadows hissed, mocking and cruel, ready to reclaim what they once sought. Oh yes, we can. Sarah's ferocity surprised even her. I will find you, Tommy. Let him go. With a surge of determination, she swung open the door behind the shadows. The light from the locket burst forth, scorching against the darkness like sunlight breaking through a storm. All my love, all my strength, I'm bringing you back, she declared, eyes burning with resolve, as her surroundings exploded into a whirlwind of light. Shadows screamed, their sorrow morphing into rage, clawing and pulling at her with all their might. Tommy, she shouted, and just then, she felt a force behind her, a presence so familiar that it spread warmth through her like a soft embrace. Mom, I'm here. In a heartbeat, she felt his small hands in hers, pulling her closer. She didn't need to look. She felt him beside her, warm and hopeful. Together, they would face this darkness. Together, Sarah cried, and the locket pulsed against her chest, radiating light that forced shadows to bolt back into the crevices of darkness. Then it happened. There was a blinding flash. The overwhelming pressure of dread lifted. The cabin began to crack, sunlight pouring in through the cracks, dissolving the darkness that had plagued them. With a gasp, Sarah opened her eyes. They stood in their backyard, the sun shining brightly overhead, no darkness in sight. The familiar sounds of their neighborhood filled the air, the cheerful laughter of children, the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. Mom, Tommy's small voice broke through her reverie. Are we safe? Sarah looked down, disbelief flooding her heart. He was here, really here. She knelt to wrap him in her arms, joy flooding her senses. Yes, sweetheart, we're safe. We're home. Tommy clung to her tightly, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the warmth of life enveloped them. Across the yard, the neighbors' houses stood still. She took a long, deep breath, a wave of relief washing over her. The sinister winds had fled. The strange car was gone, and Mr. Jenkins was just an old man tending to his garden again. But deep in her heart, she knew the memory of shadows would linger like a ghost at the periphery. They had survived this time, but the whispers of darkness were forever imprinted in her mind, a reminder that evil could lurk even in the brightest corners of life. Let us go inside, Tommy. We have a new story to read, she said softly, a weight lifting with every step they took toward their home. Tommy's laughter rang out in the air, echoing against a backdrop of newfound security. With each passing day, they would remember. They would stand vigilant, together. And as they opened the door to the home where love lived, they faced a future full of light, ready to embrace whatever came next. And with that, their story ended. But the tales of their experience would ripple through their lives like a promise, always looking beyond the shadow. Now, before you disappear into your own life, it's time for you to act. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm seriously. It makes all the difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how this concludes. This is the moment to show your support. Be part of our family and keep the stories coming.